Hi guys, welcome back. In this video we're going to learn how to convert your MBTI type using the 4-letter representation to your Jungian Cognitive Function stack. In this example here we have the INFP, which is the MBTI 4-letter code, and this is the representation in terms of cognitive functions. Now before we start, first a bit of an explanation about the two things. So this 4-letter code here is what is used if you take the test, for example, in 16 personalities to find out your personality. They will use this kind of nomenclature where you have the 4 dichotomies here. So what are the dichotomies? You have on the first SWOT, you have either introversion or extroversion. On the second SWOT, you have intuition, or they call it observation. We call it sensing in the functional model. And then on the third SWOT they have a feeling or thinking, and on the fourth SWOT they have this confusing concept which they call judging or prospecting. I mean, it's explained as the judging types are more decisive and planning and like things to be structured, while the so-called prospecting types prefer things to be open-ended. And to some extent they have captured the essence of the same thing represented using the cognitive functions, but not quite, and it's a bit confusing. So for now we will just learn how to convert between the two. So first of all, if you look at your cognitive stack, what we can notice is that actually in order to uniquely identify your type, you don't need to know all 4 of the functions. You only need to know the first 2 of the functions, since as we learned before, we have the functional axis rules, where if the first function is Fi, we know that the last function is going to be Te based on this rule here. And if the second one is extroverted intuition, the third one is going to be introverted sensing. So this means that in order to do the conversion between the two, we only need to find out the first 2 functions. Okay, first and the second function, and the rest of the functions will be automatically populated. So how do we do that? So first thing we can do is, let's say we don't know anything about this type. We look at the third letter, which represents the judgment process. They call it feeling or thinking there, which is the same in our model as well. But you look at this, and from this you can say that one of your functions is a feeling function. So you can start with here with the feeling. And after that you look at the fourth letter, which is J or P. In this case it's P. And this 4 letter is going to determine the orientation of the function coming from the third SWOT. So in this case we have feeling, and it's P. So P is for extroverted orientation, and actually, sorry, it's the opposite. P is for introverted orientation, and J is for extroverted. So let's write down P is for introverted, and J is for extroverted. In this case it's P. This means that the function is introverted. So we have determined one of the functions. We need one more function. For the other function, you look at this. Now the second SWOT, N. So it means the function is going to be an intuitive one. Okay, and now how do you know what is the orientation of the function? Well, we know that there is a rule that for the first 2 SWOTs of your personality, if one of your function is introverted, it means that the other has to be extroverted. So it means that this one has to be extroverted. And now finally, what is the order of those functions? Well, we look at the first SWOT, the I here, which says that the first SWOT is, the type is introverted, which is represented by the first SWOT function being also introverted. So when a type is introverted, it means that his most dominant process is introverted, and if the type is extroverted, again the most dominant process is extroverted. So this means that our type is going to start with Fi, and the second SWOT is going to be Ne. And now using the axis rule, we know that the third SWOT is going to be Si, and the fourth SWOT is going to be Te. And indeed, this is the correct representation of the INFP type. Okay, so now let's try to do it for some other types, just to make sure it's clear. so we can get this here and we can try for another type. We don't know what the type is, and let's do now something that has ending with judgment. Let's say it's also extroverted. So let's do the ENFJ now. So how is it going to work for the ENFJ? Well, again, we start with the third function. So the third function is a feeling one, which means that one of the top two functions here is a feeling function. So we know one of the functions is feeling. Then we look at the fourth function, the fourth SWOT, I mean, is J here, and we know that J is representing extroverted, and it is associated with the third function here. So we know that this type uses extroverted feeling. So this was the second thing we uncovered, and then after that we want to understand what is the other function when we know that the second SWOT is an N, so the other function is going to be intuition again. And since the first function was extroverted, this means that this function has to be introverted. And now we have the top two functions, and we look at finally what is the orientation. Here is the extroverted, which means that we start with the extroverted function. So this type is going to be starting with FE, and the second SWOT is going to be NI, which means the third SWOT is going to be SE, and the fourth SWOT is going to be TI. And this is the ENFJ personality type in terms of Jungian Cognitive Function stack. Okay, and let's do two more just to make sure the rule is clear. So we'll just delete those things here. Not the whole thing, just the values. And now let's do a thinker type. So let's do thinking, let's say introverted, and then so ISTJ. So what do we do for the ISTJ? Again, we start with the third function, the third SWOT here. The third SWOT is thinking, so we know that we have a thinking function. Now we look at the fourth SWOT, which is J. J means extroverted, so this thinking function is going to be extroverted. So we found out one of the functions. Then we look at the second SWOT. This time is going to be different. It's going to be S. So we know that the other function is sensing. And it's going to be introverted since the first function was extroverted. And now we look at this SWOT I to understand which of the functions is first in the stack. And since this type is introverted, it means that SI is going to be first. So the type is going to be SI and E second SWOT, which means the third SWOT is going to be FI and the last SWOT is going to be NE. And this is the ISTJ type. And okay, let's do one more. And after that, we'll do a couple of examples the other way. The other way it's a bit easier. So from the personality type to the 4-letter code. But now, so what kind of combination have we not tried? Let's say it's an extroverted instead. And here is P, because we already tried with 2 times feeling. Now we need to try it with 2 times thinking. So ESTP, how do we do with ESTP? Let's follow the rules again. So again, start with the third function, is the thinking one. So we know that one of the function is thinking. So now look at the fourth SWOT is P, which means that it's introverted. So we have a TI function. And then look at the second SWOT. This is the sensing. So we have sensing function, and it's going to be extroverted because the other one was introverted. And then we look at the orientation, it's extroverted. So the first function is going to be extroverted sensing. And the whole type is going to be extroverted sensing, introverted thinking. Then the next one, because of the axis rule, going to be extroverted feeling and introverted intuition. Okay, so this is how you convert from one type to another. Now, let's try to do it the other way around. It should be a bit easier now. Maybe we can start with this. So this is the ESTP. How do we get from here to the ESTP? So the first thing you can do is you can look, again, we only look at the first 2 functions because all the information is contained there. So the first 2 functions is going to determine the middle 2 letters of the 4-letter code. So in this case, we know it's going to be S and T, since the first two functions are sensing and thinking. And now, if you want to know if at the end we have P or J, you have to look at the orientation of this function here. So this function is introverted. You know that introverted means P. So here we have P, and the whole type is extroverted, since the first function is extroverted, which means that this is the ESTP. Okay, let's try another type. So let's try now the FI, SE, NI, TE. So let's try this type. So what is this type? Well, again, we start with the first two functions. We see that it is feeling and sensing. So we know that the middle two letters are F and S. But we need to be a bit careful here, because actually in the 4-letter code, the judgment process is always third. So you see the feeling is third, and here the thinking is third. It cannot be second. So even though the first two functions are F and S, actually the order in the 4-letter code is going to be the opposite. So the order is going to be S and then F. So these are the middle two. Now we look at this function here. So what is this function's orientation? It is introverted. Introverted means P. So here we have P. And the type is introverted, which means that it is the ISFP. Okay, let's look at one more personality type. So let's go with the, let's see, TIFE. Let's try this one. So for this one, again, we look at the top two functions, is intuition and thinking, which means that the middle letters are going to be N, T. And now we look at the orientation of the thinking function. It is introverted, which means that the final letter is going to be P. And since the type is extroverted, it means the first letter is going to be E. So this is the ENTP type. And I hope with this everything is clear regarding this. If you want to practice, here you can see all the 16 types with their 4-letter codes. You close the screen and look at it and practice yourself. But for this video, I think that's all. So thank you very much and bye-bye.